Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new The Hacker Factory podcast with hacker maker Phillip Wylie. You're about to discover what the role of a professional hacker entails, the different specializations it holds, and what it takes to learn and become one. Enjoy the conversation as Phillip and guests unveil the secrets of professional hacking, a mysterious, intriguing, and often misunderstood occupation. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Welcome to another episode of the Hacker Factory podcast. I'm your host, Phillip Wylie, and today I'm excited to be having Sheldon, aka PowerShell, joining me today. Sheldon and I know each other from the cybersecurity community, and when I started the Pwn School project, part of that was due to him and Rick that was on one of the former episodes, that they were in the Denton area, but there was no security community, so I opened up a chapter of the Pwn School project there. And since then, Sheldon's helped me co-host the meetings, coordinate the meetings since 2018. And then we converted to a DC group. So it's DC 940. So he's been very instrumental in that in our Discord community and previously our Slack community. He was big on mentoring and helping people on theirs, really loves to help people and the ideal kind of person for this episode. So I'm looking forward to hearing his story and his advice. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. I've listened to quite a few episodes, even lately, listened to a few big name people that I really idolize, and definitely an honor to be on an episode and chat with you and share my story, and really hope it speaks to somebody out there for sure.
I'm sure it will. So for those that haven't heard of you, why don't you kind of share your story and kind of what got you interested in security and technology and kind of your path on how you got there?
Yeah, I think for fun, I'll take it just back to childhood maybe, because I feel like I have a weird path into security. I mean, it's no bear wrestling or anything, but I think it's definitely unique to some, and I've been blessed to have some really cool opportunities to get into the field. But as far as like that hacker mindset, right? Sometimes I don't consider myself much of a hacker because I don't do a lot of red team offensive work. I definitely know a decent bit about it and I love doing it. But once I started getting into that like hacker scene and getting that definition of what it means to be a hacker, which I think my definition is just making things work in ways that they weren't intended. And my mother likes to remind me of this, that I've been hacking on stuff since I've been a kid. I've always enjoyed taking electronics apart, seeing how they work, trying to put them back together. Might be a few screws missing, but they work. You know what I mean? I've really always enjoyed learning how things work, right? And a lot of that, I'm super hands-on. I have to explore. I have to tear things up, take them apart, see all the bits and pieces of how it works, and then make sure I can understand it. And I didn't really realize that, honestly, because of the path I took out of high school until later when I got into the field. And then I started kind of looking back in my past and like, you know what? I have been doing this type of stuff. I remember in high school, started with wanting to play video games like most people who wanted a computer at the time. Had my first computer built and learned how to build my own, but I remember playing Diablo 2. I don't know if you've ever played that before. But I remember playing it so much in like the high school times, and got to the point where I had to go get a real job at 16, and I learned how to use a bot for the first time and literally make my computer play Diablo 2 for me for hours upon hours while I slept and went to work, and, you know, would always just toy with stuff like that. And then as I got to the end of high school, trying to decide what I wanted to do for college, I had two things in mind, and they were wildly different. One was computer science. Always liked electronics, computers, those type of things. And the other was youth ministry. And man, I was so close to going and doing computer science, and I just felt honestly a calling because of the influence that my youth pastor had on my life at that point. Just had a really positive experience, not with just him, but just my youth group in general, and just the influence that I put myself into and around. And I just really enjoyed what he did and how he made a difference in my life and the investment that he made in my life. And thought to myself, do I want to be a nerd and sit behind a computer screen all day, or do I want to, work with other students and make a difference? You know what I mean? And at the time,
Mhm.
that felt like a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, I don't want to sit behind a computer all day. Fast forward now, I sit behind a computer all day. but but yeah, I decided to actually go um, to a Bible college and didn't know what I wanted to do at first, other than possibly youth ministry. And got there, started learning, met a lot of great people. Hated college, still do to this day, but I got through it. Took me a little longer, and finished with college and went off to be a youth pastor for about 6 years before moving to the Dallas area and getting my first job in IT. But putting the story back together, some funny things even when I first got to college that I really didn't think about much, but things I was doing then. Like I was one of the only dudes with a computer at college, which I found hilarious. We weren't allowed to have TVs. This is a conservative college. Like you couldn't go to the movies. I couldn't go on a date without a chaperone. It was bad.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was pretty conservative. I'm glad to be past some of those days, but it was funny. But one of the only dudes with a computer, right? And guys always want to come play games on the computer and hang out and be that source and hub for the computer. But like anybody back in the day, you didn't have Spotify, you didn't have all the streaming, you didn't have a lot of access. And if you're broke like I was, you didn't have access to music and things of that nature. The days of Napster, right? Everything out there. So yeah, don't don't judge me, but I downloaded a song or two here and there, just like the next guy at that age. And funny story is, I got called up my room by the probably the only network administrator at this very small Bible college, and he's like, "What are you doing on your computer right?" And I was like, "I'm just hanging out, man, listening to some music." He's like, "What are you doing with the computer and the internet?" I was like, "Why?" He's like, "You're sucking down like 80% of the whole entire school's bandwidth right now." I'm like, just downloading some music, man. And he got upset with me, and he started hitting me with, which I should have known better at the time, but he started hitting me with the ideas of like, copyright issues and how I can get in big, huge trouble, and sort of threatening me and trying to scare me a little bit. And basically, short story is they took away my access for the network. Um, and didn't know it at the time, but all he did was do like a shut on my port in my room. He just shut off the ports in my room. And so I needed internet. So I went to Walmart, wherever I went, and bought like a 50-foot LAN cable, ran it up and over the wall into the next guy's room and plugged it in, and it worked. I'm like, this fool doesn't know how to do any MAC address filtering. I'm in, and I didn't download any more after that. Tried to keep a low profile for a while. But on top of that, what was funny is they filtered everything port wise except 80 and 443 to the internet. Everything else was filtered, and for those type of software, it used like I think like the SOX port at the time. And so the hacking part came into where I did like a SOX to HTTP proxy and bypassed and went through port 80, and they didn't know how to do protocol aware or anything like that. And so even then, like early on, I'm sitting there doing hacking stuff, script kiddie stuff, but you know, just making things work the way it wasn't intended, getting around things that I probably shouldn't, just trying to survive and be a young dude wanting to listen to some music at the time. But just funny history stuff that I look back on. I'm like, I was a hacker, But anyways, fast forward, I guess, and feel free to interrupt me, unpack anything that's of any interest. But yeah, fast forward. The big pivot though is moving to the Dallas area. I resigned from my position as a youth pastor, not for any bad reason, just my wife wanted to be closer to family and transition into something else. And quite frankly, couldn't pay for a wife and 3 kids on a ministry budget at the time. It was doesn't pay well. And I tried to pivot into technology. At that point, I knew networking decent, okay, kind of like small home office networking stuff. I knew how to build a computer, how to install Windows. Didn't really mess, with any other operating systems or anything quite yet, but took care of the networking and computer stuff at the church. I had rebuilt their website because it looked like complete garbage. Looked like something that was built out of like the mid '90s probably because it was, you know, and I was like, man, this looks awful. It looks terrible for anybody who were to visit our church website. So I learned how to build websites and do that type of thing out of necessity at the time. But that actually helped me because when I moved into this area, there's a little bit of who you know as a friend of a family member that happened to be a director at a big insurance company in McKinney and gave me a shot for an interview to do a contract. And the contract was 6 months. Money was okay. Well, nothing special, but I thought it was pretty awesome at the time. And I was to replace like 700 uh, Windows XP computers and upgrade them to Windows 7 within 6 months on a call center that they had. And that was the job. And I didn't know a whole lot of what I was doing. I didn't know anything about Active Directory. I didn't know anything really about a enterprise grade network or how they do things. I knew how to install Windows. I knew hardware and learned how to build websites. And got that job surprisingly. And when I asked later on why they gave me a chance, and this is what I think will hopefully help other people. I asked them, why'd you give me a chance? Like, why did you hire me? Like, I literally had nothing on my resume very technical other than building some websites, and I said that I took care of like a Soho network, you know? And they said to me that I presented myself as humble, teachable, hungry, and passionate. You know, those type of things were what they gave me. Not like, I think one of them said you had a cool beard, and I saw that you learned how to build websites. So that showed that you can learn things, right? But their biggest thing was like being humble, just excitement and passion for what what you're trying to do. But being humble and teachable will go a long way, you know. Um, and that stuck with me. And I was dead set on, even though I didn't know a whole lot, working my tail off and doing everything I could to do the best job that I could. I was in there, you know, imaging 20 computers a day, deploying 20 computers, like just back to back, just going. And my boss was like, yo, bro, you got to slow down. You're going to be done with your contract in 2 months. I'm like, okay, show me something else I can do, you know? And they put me into their ticketing system. And next thing I know, I'm like up in the executive's office fixing something. And 20 minutes later, my manager comes like hustling down the hallway, getting like, he was like out of breath by the time he got there. He's like, hey guys, what's going on in here? You know, just trying to save face, hoping that I'm not like screwing things up with an executive. And at that point, I had social skills, working in ministry. I had, public speaking skills. I felt completely fine interacting with whoever, executive or didn't matter. I didn't see him any different in my eyes, right? I didn't know that was a big deal, that, you got to send the best of the best to the executives. And I always thought that was funny. And it wasn't a long time after that they started requesting me, to start do their tickets and whatnot, which was humbling and cool. But they gave me a job there after 2 months. They turned me into full time, gave me a job, and I worked that for like a year and a half. And I remember about a year, and I'm like, okay, what's next? I can't do desktop support stuff forever, like that's not going to necessarily pay the bills. What else can I do? And I started out, I had what I thought was cool about desktop is I had the ability to interface with all the different departments, technical and non-technical. And so it's kind of like just taking notes, right? Just surveying, like, okay, I could be a server admin. I could be a network admin. Can't be a developer. I don't know anything about that. I could do, some web development, SEO stuff maybe, and just trying to take inventory of all the things I could do so I could start to make some goals, and then I came across this pod of new dudes coming in. There's about 4 or 5 of them. And due to some PCI compliance stuff, they needed to hire a security team. So they just hired a brand new security. I had no idea what these dudes did. But I was starting to set all their computers up, and they were on this like solo pod all by themselves. And they always looked like they were doing cool stuff. And they had like all sorts of different computers. Like some of them are using Linux. And I'm like, I didn't even see Linux before. Like I generally knew what it was, but and I just started talking to them and asking questions. And I was fascinated because one, they love sharing information. Like anything I would ask about anything computer related, they would answer my questions. I was trying to work on Macs that I had no idea about, and I'll be over there asking one of the guys about it. He'd happily answer In fact, I know this sounds corny, but I literally have some sticky notes because he ended up being one of my biggest mentors. I have sticky notes of commands he would write down to give to me to help me do stuff. It was like um, how to copy from one disk to another disk, and just silly little commands that he was sharing with me. Like seriously, one of them's like how to ls, and list out files in a Linux file system. And I have those as a keepsake, just because remembering those days of just going from where I was to where I'm at now. It keeps me humble, I think. I don't know. It sounds weird, but um, those guys were just awesome to me. They were so nice, so open, would share any information, anything I'd ask, and then I started asking about everything they're doing. I thought it was fascinating. I would find any excuse to go talk to these guys. I'd have like a malware tech bench USB drive at the time because we had terrible antivirus, and I would find stuff all over the computers all the time. And I'd use my little super slick malware tech bench, malware bench tech bench, and I'd pull malware off of different computers. Nothing too awesome, right? Like pups and unwanted stuff most of the time. But I'd go there like a little puppy, like, I got some malware. You want it? He's like, yeah, dude, copy it over to this computer and just copy it there. It's like, you want me to put malware on your computer? He's like, yeah. Like, what do you do with it? He's like, well, every time I reboot it, it just wipes itself clean. And so you put it on there, I'm going to open it up and let it explode and see what it does. And he's like, at the time, he's explaining to me how he collects, IOCs, indicators of compromise. And I'm like, that's awesome. Then what do you do? He's like, well, I go over to this SIM thing, this logging platform that has all of our logs in the network, and I look for these indicators from the malware and see if I can find it anywhere else. I'm like, that sounds awesome. Can you show that to me? And so he took me over to his little console and showed me, I think it was like IBM SIM at the time, QRadar. And he was like, you want to try to find something? I was like, yeah, and he's like, what would you look for? I was like, I don't know. How about the middle of the night? Like when nobody should be working, right? We're a US based company, middle of the night, nothing should be going on. Can we look from like midnight to 5 a.m? He's like, yeah. And then he filtered that in. I didn't know what he was doing. I just kind of watched and told him what to do. And I looked at the output of the screen. I said, are those like country flags? He's like, yeah. I was like, is that China? He's like, yeah. I was like, can we filter on that? Like, do we do any business with China? He's like, sure don't. And so he filtered it onto the stuff from China, and he's like, now what do you see? And on the screen I see this graph. It's like, I don't know, an hour long window, and you see boop, boop, boop every like 10 or 15 minutes. I can't remember what it was, and you see one connection. And I was like, it looks like it's just on a regular pattern, like communicating out every 10 minutes. And he's like, congratulations, son, you just found your first command and control. I was like, wait, what? And then he explained it to me, and I'm like, dude, that was mind blown. So from that moment on, dude, I went home, talked to my wife. She hated it because I just was saying all sorts of nerdy stuff. She had no idea. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take the A+, and then I'm going to take the Network Plus, and then I'm going to take the Sec Plus. And by the time I get the Sec Plus, I think I can get like an entry-level security job. This is probably going to take me 3 to 5 years. We're trying to like figure out how we can get our own house and like, just be independent from making the weird transition where I didn't have a job. And I was all excited about it, man. I had this whole 3 to 5 year plan of how I was going to become a security analyst on the SOC team. Cause I thought these dudes, everything they did was so cool. And I guess I'll go back, like there was a 15-year veteran in the FBI. I'll leave his name out of it, but he had just moved into the private sector and had a lot of defense knowledge. Probably one of my biggest mentors to date. Another one was a really young dude, but he had started when he was super young already, had done defense contract and all sorts of stuff. And he was like the senior architect at 23. This guy was just like mind-blowingly smart. Like HD Moore level smart. I don't know if you ever talked to HD before. That guy's on another level, but he's kind of like a mini HD Moore in my eyes. And then there's like this dude that's like a self-taught hacker that's over there like cracking my password on the network and putting it on a whiteboard. I'm like, yo, bro. he like blanked out part of it, like left the last few characters. I'm like, what are you doing over here? And there's a compliance guy, and no offense, but that was super boring to me, and it still is. So But yeah, it was just that was my experience up to that point, and I put in a game plan. I thought that was I thought you could have put heroin in my veins at that moment when I found that C2 in the sim, and there was just no turning back at that point. I was super energized. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I was dead set to figure out how to get myself there. Um, the cool thing is back to the humble, the teachable, the passion. I have no other way to explain the opportunities I was given, both with just getting the desktop support job with no experience, but then a month later, I got pulled into an office with my manager and the director of the infosec group. And this is a month, literally just a month after I'd set my sights on, I'm going to do all these certifications, I'm going to do all this and that, and I'm going to get there. And they offered me an associate SOC analyst position and said, "Would this is what it would entail? Would you like to do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, duh," And it came with a little bit of raise, definitely nothing special. And they started bringing me in like the meetings before I transitioned. They're talking about all these 3-letter acronyms. I felt so stupid. I was just Googling everything like, what is DOP? you know? And dude, I was in over my head and I loved it. It was like drinking from the fire hose, and I couldn't wait to sit next to these dudes and just soak it all in. And I was so ready to feel like a complete idiot and just sponge it up. And that's literally what happened. Ended up in a pod with these dudes where I could just hunt and look for stuff and ask as many dumb questions as I possibly wanted to, and just soaking it all in. They sent me to, I think it was like a month or two after I started. They sent me off to DC to go to the Big Sands Cyber Defense Summit and do my GSEC. And again, I sat in that class and just hooked a fire hose to my face. I had no idea what's going on, and I loved it. And I decompressed all that over the next few months, took the certification, actually passed it with a pretty decent score, surprised myself, and it was just it hasn't stopped. Just from then, it's just been continual. Um, Always learning, always staying curious, always just trying to stay humble, teachable. And that was a long-winded journey of how I got into InfoSec.
Yeah. So why don't you share like where you went from there to where you are now?
Man, the journey just continued. Honestly, I stayed there after I transitioned to InfoSec. I stayed there for about another year and a half, and I was super content. I really liked the team of guys that I was working with. One of my mentors, the guy that helped me do the first threat hunting, he did move on. Like I don't know, 6 or so months after I got started, but I stayed in close contact with him, and the other guys that were there. I got to rub shoulders with them. I stayed about a year and a half, and really it was like, if I'm honest, nothing has really ever been financially motivated for me. I've just been humbled that people pay me to do this type of stuff that I think is absolutely cool and fascinating. But at the same time, I know I need to be mindful of like what the going rates of being paid is. Like I don't want to be taken advantage of, and I have a family. I have way too many kids and a wife, and I owe it to them to do the best I can financially too, right? So, although it wasn't never and still isn't about money for me, I started realizing like how much people were getting paid to do the same thing that I was doing, and they were bringing me into interviews to interview other analysts that they were trying to expand the team, and I was like, cool, I know as much as these guys do. Like it was really humbling to be like just validating, right? Validating that, dang, I know this. And then I found out what these guys were asking. I don't know why they told me, but they, found out what they were asking salary wise. And I'm like, holy cow, dude. Like they're asking, I don't know if I should toss out, money factors on the interview, but they were tossing out a, nearly twice as much as what I was making to transition from
Uh,
desktop support. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should go on the hunt a little bit, or at least give them reasons to rectify me. You know what I mean? Which is what I did try first. Like I'm probably, I'm probably, I probably commit to a fault. I think, to where I saw no reason to leave that place. Right? I was like, shoot, I'll see if I can get some interviews and like get some offers and give them a reason to rectify my salary, and I'll stay here. We'll just keep going, right? Little did I know that HR had zero interest in doubling my salary for no reason in their eyes. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I ended up having to move on, but nothing on them. That's just how business works, and no hard feelings. I'm still friends with a lot of those, but well, none of them really work there anymore. But I believe I could go back there and work in that same business today with no problem. But got a few interviews and landed where I'm at now with a large retailer for a reasonable, salary for where I was at the time, and they hired me on as, I guess, what you call like a tier one SOC analyst, basically, right? Working on their security operations team as an analyst. I got some cool, fun tasks initially when I got in there. The company had just been, you might be able to figure this out if you Google enough context, but they had just got breached in 2014 and 15 alongside of Home Depot and Target and all the big ones. And I knew that before I interviewed, and I thought that was cool. I'm like, this could go one or two ways. Either they didn't learn their lesson, and I'm going to really quickly find out when I interview, or they learn their lesson and they're going to have a potentially decent team and the budget to do some cool things, right, and recover and really build up the security team. And that's actually what it was. They didn't have a security team. No brainer at the time, right? They didn't have a security team, and they were building one out, and they were just recovering from that second breach, unfortunately, when I came in. And it was cool. Everybody was on high alert about everything. Security really mattered to everybody. I'm not going to say the budget was endless, because it wasn't, but they had a lot of top tier tools, a small not agile in the developer sense, but just a nimble, lean team. A lot of awesome, smart people that I have enjoyed working with. I won't name names again, but some of your friends that we know a lot of the same people. But I've had the honor to work with some really cool, sharp people in my time, still at the same place 7 years later. But I'll just work my way up, just staying curious, staying passionate, putting myself in any position I can to help or do better or improve something. And in fact, I got promoted first to engineer. And it's because there's tools that I think the engineering side of the house just couldn't keep up with. They didn't have enough people. And I'm like, hey, I know how to do Silence at the time. Let me do that. There's other tools that they had. I was like, let me see if I can't pick up some slack, right? And I just started doing engineering work before I even knew it was engineering work for security operations, and ended up getting promoted to engineer, and then a few years later to senior engineer, and just started tossing more and more engineering and stuff on my plate. And I don't know, I guess it's been a little over a year or so ago, I got promoted to security operations architect, whatever that is. I don't really care about the titles. I just care if I get to do fun, interesting things that I'm passionate about. And you can call me senior toilet cleaner. It doesn't bother me. If I'm paid competitively and I'm working on cool stuff and working with, cool, sharp people, then I'm happy. And that's been my journey at my place currently. And I'm still working on fun stuff, but that comes with hard work and passion, right? Like when you're humble about what you do, and when you're teachable, and when you have passion, and it just doesn't feel like a job, I'm not gonna say it's easy, right? I'm not gonna say doing InfoSec stuff is easy. There's definitely stressful times. There's definitely events and things that go on. There's definitely times where I had to stay up till 3, 4 in the morning somewhere at a data center, right? But that's not every single day, and I like the mix up. I like that it's not mundane, the same thing every day. I can one of my coworkers, and they're a DC 940 member, and actually I met them there, and that's how they got the job. Like, we can talk about that. Who is a big deal, right? Getting yourself out there in the community. I know we'll probably go into some of that, but he calls me the chaos engineer because I'm just always in there causing chaos, man, breaking stuff. Like, my job's to fix it and prevent things, and come up with different ways to detect and prevent things. But you also got to know, to be a good defense, you got to know your offense. And so I love hacking on stuff and breaking things and figuring out things, and causing a little bit of chaos here and there, right? If it's all like unicorns and rainbows all the time, and you never have anything risky that pops up, then what are you doing? So if I don't have enough risky things going on, I'm gonna create some. I'm gonna poke some holes and create myself more work, but it's fun, man. You know, I'm like, hey, I just did this really scary thing. What if someone else could do that? He's like, my CISO will be like, yeah, please go fix that right away. You got it. you know. Anyways, enough
So
rants.
what
But
so what is your advice for someone that's wanting to get into the industry? Because you had the path you went down, and I know you've mentored and helped a lot of others get into the industry or advance from IT or advance their career in security. So what's your advice for someone that wants to get into cybersecurity?
I I really truly feel like anybody can do it. I don't care what your background. I told you I went to Bible college, but I didn't tell you that I don't have a degree. I studied adolescent counseling and theology, but I'm 3 credits short of math or science in my my bachelor's degree, and I couldn't care less because there's reasons I should probably go snag that and just finish it, but I haven't had a good reason yet. Um, but it doesn't matter what your background is. I've heard of so many various backgrounds in our industry. It's actually really cool to hear those different stories. I mean, everybody knows your story. It's hilarious and awesome all at the same time, right? You're out here wearing spandex and suplexing people to CAD drafting and to fighting bears, and then elite hacker. It's just, and there's so many cool stories out there. So one, I really think that anybody can do it if you set your mind to it. I was listening to, I think, Hutch in his episode, right? He's like, you just set your mind to it. It seems hard at first, right? But if you set your mind to it, you can do it. And what I think's important though to get there is putting yourself around good people, finding a good network. Get out there wherever you're at. If there's not a meetup for hackers, cybersecurity, whatever, I mean, find something. There's probably going to be a DEF CON group. There's probably going to be some sort of group that's in your area that you can go meet up with other people in the cybersecurity infosec kind of field, right? I think that's huge. I think there's some really great certifications out there that are pretty dang affordable. There's a lot of community. I'm not a huge college fan, if I'm honest with you, but it's more about time and money spent. If I really do break that down, where I don't think it's a must. I think it's right for some people, but if you're like me, where you're super hands-on, you don't learn by sitting in the classroom and just being lectured. You gotta tear stuff apart. You gotta break mom's VCR and try to put it back together to really reinforce how something works. And so for me, the certification stuff was perfect. Like SANS training was amazing for me. Their format now, it's super cost prohibitive. I've never paid for a SANS course in my life, nor do I plan to. If my company will pay for it, which they have over, historically, I'm reasonable with it. I only ask for, some training every so many years just to keep progressing a little bit. But there's so much out there that's hands-on. The anti-siphon training out of, Black Hills InfoSec and John Strand, there's a ton of stuff there that's like super affordable. They're entry-level classes. They will literally give you discount codes openly down to like $20 for a 4-day course, like super hands-on labs, get your hands dirty, teach on it, and then let you play with it. And they'll give it to you for free in some of those courses. Like, there's literally no excuse. There's so much content out there. There's content on YouTube. You've listed tons of the different sites and resources that are out there. The CompTIA stuff's pretty affordable. I mean, I'm sure you know more than I do about some of those tracks, but I really truly feel that almost anybody can take the time. Some will take them longer than others. Just get the Security Plus. If you don't want to pay for the Network Plus or the A Plus, I don't think that you need to. In my opinion, go study the content. Get a $30 book off of Amazon with Mike Myers or someone like that, and just study their manuals and just learn the content. Like, I guess that's a big thing. Don't study to pass the test or a certification. Study to learn and understand. If you don't learn it and you don't understand it, then it's useless. I can talk to somebody with a CISSP, a CEH, whatever else the HR is going to want. I could talk to them for 10 minutes and weed through the people who just studied to take a test versus studied to really learn and understand. Like, a principle that I follow is, like, if I can explain it to a 7-year-old or whatever, and they understand it, then I feel like I understand it. When I was studying for the CISSP, I was made to, well, I wasn't made to take the CISSP. I was highly encouraged to take the CISSP, and I passed somehow. But when I was studying encryption as part of one of the domains, I was like, this was over my head. I'm studying, I think it was the transposition cipher. And I'm like really trying to study to understand this. And I got to a point where I felt like I understand it well enough to where I had this concept where my daughter at the time was 7. I'm like, I'm going to see if I can get my daughter who is ADHD, you know, and she doesn't, you know, unless something's interesting, she's not going to give you the time of day, right? And so I decided I was going to play this with like, hey, daddy, you and daddy, we can write secret messages to each other that no one else can read. And I literally taught her I didn't use any big words, but I taught her the transposition cipher algorithm of how we could do a shared key, you know, our secret password, right? And we use that password to do the transposition algorithm like on paper. And 7 years old, and it clicked. Like I was able to explain it in a way that she understood it. And so I felt like I truly understood it, and she loved it. Like for weeks upon weeks, she's probably forgot a lot of it now, but she's way older, and I'm not cool enough anymore. But back and forth, she would come in there with a secret note, and I'd decrypt it, and I'd write one back, and she loved it. Besides the point, but like that's just my theory around like study to understand something. Don't just try to blaze through it. Take your time if you have to, you know. But I really think. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I've seen many cases where people, someone from the local community, they worked in reverse engineering for a while, and they got a job as a pen tester, and then they were going to need to learn how assembly. In college, they took assembly, but they really didn't learn it. They just did enough to pass the class and had to go back and learn it all over again. So like you're saying, you can save yourself a lot of trouble. This is something you're going to use. You might as well use it now, and it's going to make it a lot easier when you go through the interview, when people ask you questions around that topic.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm not trying to judge anybody, but I've done a lot of interviews, interviewing people for different jobs, you know, things of that nature, and sitting in those, and it's not hard to tell. And I hate doing like intimidating interviews. I try to get someone as comfortable as possible. Like one of the best dudes in our team right now has been with us for a long time. Super smart dude, was just sweating bullets in his interview. He was like overly humble. Like you could tell that he just was super nervous. And I was like, man, what can I do to get this guy to relax and let's just talk shop type of stuff. And I didn't ask the dude, you know, what the 7 layers of the OSI model was. You know what I mean? What does your home lab look like, bro? What's stuff that you like enjoy working on? What are cool things that you did at your last job that you had? And just let them talk, right? And be comfortable, because you can just tell real quick if someone's passionate about what they do. And that's what I'm always trying to uncover. I'm trying to uncover their passions, you know, and what they're doing on their own time or at their previous job. And you can quickly decipher, like, if someone's really knows their stuff and is passionate about it. Sure, if they've gotten some, you know, cool, notable certs and whatnot, obviously you can't go out and pass some of these certifications without at least learning something. But it definitely doesn't say everything. If someone shows up with a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity, cool. You showed that you can learn. You showed you can pass some tests and stuff, and hopefully you've learned a lot. But that's just part of it for me. Like I think you really got to focus on understanding what you're learning and trying to apply it too. So that's the other big thing I'll give is like, learn it, then go apply it. Get a home lab, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. I bought a $200 server, you know, used off of Craigslist when I first started, and talked to my wife and let me buy a full-size server rack because it was cheaper than a used half rack or a new half rack. And I literally came home in the, you know, huge server rack in the back of our minivan. She didn't know what she was getting herself into. But I started racking up servers and like free used switches I got from buddies and from work. I'd spend minimal money on like some basic networking gear like Ubiquity. They have decent gear, but just set up a basic home lab, enough for you to goof around on, you know, setting up like Security Onion and learning how to do like defense stuff and playing with Zeek and Suricata and all these different defense tools, and even setting up some VMs that I could hack on. There's a lot of great like hacking resources to learn on the internet, but for a while there's more now, but there wasn't a lot of like defense type of stuff. You can find a lot more now, but back then there was no good ways I could think of other than just staging out a lab and doing stuff. Or even on the hacking side, you know, I've talked about like word driving. I've talked about other little goofy stuff and projects that I've done just for fun, you know, and just learning, okay, like how do I hack Wi-Fi? Now I didn't ward drive and hack everybody's Wi-Fi. You know, I'm not. I want to keep myself employed, but just going around doing ward driving, there's no harm in that. Let the kids play Pokemon Go, and I collect them, you know, all the Wi-Fi. But like, you know, I staged out stuff to hack my own Wi-Fi and learn how that works, and then, you know, was downloading Have I Been Pwned data set and trying to learn how to do hashcat and crack passwords, and I was able to use that, like even like the hacking stuff. I was able to use password cracking in the enterprise, right? Like trying to work on getting better password policies and be like, hey, if I can crack this many people's passwords or guess their passwords in our enterprise, like maybe we should do something about it. You know, uh, I think my record at one of my places was like I think like 140 accounts that I got passwords to in like a matter of 4 hours. I was on the blue team. You know, I'm just like, hey, I'm trying to prove a point here. Like people are using silly stuff. I can do some basic password spray. Like one, did you detect me doing it? Two, what are we gonna do about all these people, you know, using summer 2020, you know, hashtag,
Yeah.
you know, stuff like that. But sorry, I'm off on a rant. But yeah, just
Oh, no problem.
I really do think anybody can pick up a book, can watch a YouTube video, can set up an inexpensive lab, um, find people like you and I and other people who are super passionate that'll talk to you and answer questions. Like there's no dumb questions. Come to DC 940, ask me the silliest questions you can think of because they're probably not as silly as you think, and I will brain dump on you literally for hours afterwards. You know, and it's been really fun to have people like that who've shown up and just sometimes I'll find people. I look for people who look like they're lost and don't know what they're doing at some of our meetups and other meetups I've gone to. Um, I've picked up lots of mentees that way. There's one guy we met at North Texas Cybersecurity group, and that was going on right. And I just cornered him afterwards and said, "Hey, you know, tell me about yourself. You know, what brought you here?" And he was trying to get into security, and I ended up mentoring him for about a year. Now the dude works for Trusted Sec. It's like he works for Dave Kennedy. I'm like, you have like my dream employer. Um, and there's been other stories like that of people. You know, you've interviewed John. What's his last name? Starts with an
Which
M.
one?
Starts with an M. He was a cop.
Oh, John Marin. John Marin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Marin, but you know, you interviewed him. Like he joked on the interview with you that I told him he couldn't do it, but that's not right. I told him it'd be really hard to do what he was doing until I found out that he had like 15 hours a day to study. I was like, oh, cool, never mind. You got 15 hours a day. Yeah, you got this, bro. But
Yeah.
most people didn't have that luxury, and he killed it. He's awesome, man. He really. It was fun to watch him. Dude, it didn't. I don't. How many months did that take him? He flew through it. That was super awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting because he went through like CEH, then Pentest Plus, then the OSCP, and
Yeah, I told him my opinions on some of those, and he had a game plan. He was set, and I think even me joking around that it would be hard. I think that even obviously motivated even more. He's like, I'm gonna show this PowerShell guy, but I loved it, man. More power to him. That was super awesome that he had that level of time to dedicate. But you don't have to have 15 hours a day. I had 3 kids at the time and a full-time job, and you know, still heavily involved volunteering even to this day at my, you know, my church and with youth. I still like to do that type of thing too. And, you know, anybody I think can find the time to do it if they dedicate themselves, you know. I had no degree, no certifications whatsoever all the way up through my journey until I got my first certification a month or so after getting into InfoSec. Maybe my story's unique. Maybe that's a little far fetched for most people. Maybe I got lucky. I don't know. But staying humble, teachable, surrounding yourself with smart people, networking, that's just been my journey so far. I literally had none of that until I got that first job in InfoSec. So it's possible, you know. I do recommend doing continuing education, whether it's certifications, whether it's affordable college, whatever it may be. Like always be learning, and that's been my journey. But getting into it, you can do it. You know, there's so many different. I'm sure you have tons of advice on how to do it too. There's no specific way, but there's a lot of like, I feel like there's definitely a lot of commonalities in the opinions that I've heard from you, from doing other interviews, from your books, from all sorts of stuff. There's a lot of commonalities, and there's similar things, right? You hear passion, you hear be humble, you hear be teachable, you hear, you know, do self-study, you hear watch some YouTube videos, get on the various websites, listen to various people, go to your you know, local hacker and cybersecurity meetups. You hear all those things from so many people. So do those things.
Great advice. We're getting down towards the end of the show. Is there anything you'd like to share before we close up?
I always hear you ask, do you feel like coding is necessary to get into cybersecurity? Yeah. You ask some people that, and I also give my just for those who want opinions on that. I knew jack squat about any kind of scripting or coding until I was well into my security engineer role. Does it help? Heck yeah. Now working with APIs and learning how to do some PowerShell, Python, some basic scripting, not necessarily programming, but more like scripting stuff, and being able to like help to automate and speed yourself up. I do wish I would have learned it sooner. So there's that. But do you have to know it? I don't think so. You know, I don't think it's a requirement to start. It is very helpful. I do recommend it though. You know, get yourself in there with some PowerShell, some Python if you want to, but it's not a requirement. But no, I mean, follow us on our Discord for 940 if you're in our area. Love to meet anybody in person. If you're not, reach out to me on Twitter, Mastodon, LinkedIn, whatever your flavor. Love to chat, love to answer questions. I can't mentor everybody in the world, but if I can do it, I'll do it, you know. I've had some really awesome mentors, as I spoke of in my past, and I feel like I owe it back to the community to help however I can. I feel inadequate most of the time. I feel like I'm not, you know, I'm no XYZ person that's big in our industry, but I have some knowledge and I'm willing to share it. And if it helps you, awesome. If it doesn't, awesome. Maybe you can teach me something.
Cool. Thanks for joining. It was great to have you on, sharing your story and your advice.
Appreciate it. Again, honored to be on here. Hope it helps somebody, and I appreciate the invite.
Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Hacker Factory podcast with Phillip Wylie. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.